So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to go through a ton of information. I'm going to start things off and let you know that you don't have to make all the changes at once. Even a 10% change is 10% improvement. Let me tell you one thing. Of all the lectures we do lectures on exercise, we do lectures on nutrition, and we do lectures on minimizing cancer and heart disease and managing stress, which none of you have, I'm sure. But of all the lectures, this is, if I've been telling my patients, this is really a cancer prevention lecture. How many people are afraid of cancer? Put your hands up if you're afraid of cancer. Okay, so, yeah, me too, right? So, of all the lectures, this is probably the one that's going to give you the most tools to take home and actually transform your life and that of your family. How many people realize that you live in a toxic world? Put your hands up, okay? Okay, now put your hands down for a second. Raise your hands if you have a plan to deal with the toxins in your life. Okay, so some people, that's good. A lot of people don't.
So our environment is very toxic. We have more than 77,000 chemicals that are being produced in North America alone. Over 3,000 of these chemicals are actually added to our food supply. And over 10,000 of these chemicals are solvents, emulsifiers, food preservatives, and they're actually used within our food processing techniques. The effects of these toxins on our body. So according to the British Medical Journal, 3/4 of all cancers are caused by environmental and lifestyle factors. It's not just our genetics. According to the Columbia University School of Public Health, 95%, okay, so again, 95% of cancers are caused by diet and environmental toxicity. And the typical Canadian that we find has 400 to 800 chemicals that are actually stored within their bodies. And these chemicals are typically stored within the fat cells.
So there's a huge exhaustive list here of the short and long-term effects of toxins. Includes cancer. Obviously we talked about this effectively as being a cancer prevention lecture. Hormone imbalances, we'll talk specifically about what some of they are. It can affect your nutrition. It can cause nerve disorders, nerve dysfunction, viral infections, headaches. It actually can relate to obesity. You see that's down there. You can see there's a whole exhaustive list of some of the short and long-term effects of toxins on our body. So if you are dealing with problems that are on this list, it's just important for you to understand that the problem you may have, the headaches you may have, the fatigue you may have, may be related to toxins that you're exposed to. Dr. Frank mentioned how it's 400 to 800 chemicals that are in the average Canadian.
Okay, so what is toxicity? We need to define it. So it's the degree to which a substance is able to damage an exposed organism, and it can occur in acute versus chronic states.
So an acute stage of toxicity, that's pretty obvious. That's like someone overdosing on a medication, someone who takes cyanide or some sort of a poison that's going to kill you right away. Chronic toxicity is something different. Now if I was to put a pack of cigarettes in front of you or start smoking a cigarette, is one cigarette going to kill me? What do you think? No, one cigarette's not going to kill you. Even a pack of cigarettes, even a pack a day for 6 months probably won't kill you. Maybe even for a few years. But what happens is as you continually expose yourself to those toxins, are there toxins in that cigarette? Yeah, there's thousands of toxins in that cigarette. But the key thing, it's the repeated exposure over many, many years is what affects your health. But I want you to understand that what we're talking about today, chewing a little gum with aspartame, you're not going to drop dead. Putting some shampoo on your hair that's got SLS on it, which we'll talk about. It's not like, oh, my hair hurts since I've been putting it. You're not going to feel, and these are chronic exposures. And so don't beat yourself up if you and your family have been exposed for a long period of time to some of these things, or if you're, using the microwave or some of the things we're going to talk about. And it's important to understand that you can make a change now because it's not the acute exposure that will affect your health. It's the long-term chronic exposure that will.
We do a lot of different research projects at the Environmental Working Group on a wide range of topics. But tonight, I want to talk to you about one specific project involving 10 Americans. 10 Americans who have really been instrumental in inspiring what we consider to be one of the most important environmental campaigns in history. One day, we collected a sample of blood from each of these 10 Americans, and we sent it to a laboratory to analyze it for 413 different toxic chemical pollutants, pesticides and industrial chemicals alike. Of course, scientists have been studying pollution in air, in water, and land for decades. But it's only recently that they turned to the study of pollution in people. And that's what this project was designed also to do. There are hundreds and hundreds of toxic chemicals in the air in the United States, hundreds of millions of pounds emitted each year. But we know for a fact that none of these 10 Americans were exposed to these chemicals by virtue of the air that they breathed, even though we found some of these very chemicals in these 10 people. Could also have been the water that they drank, and believe it or not, some drinking water does start off looking like this before it's treated. But we know for a fact it wasn't the tap water. Of course, it could have been food that was the route of exposure. But we know for a fact that none of these 10 Americans were exposed to the chemicals we found in them as a result of food that they bought at the grocery store, bought at a restaurant, and consumed. That was not the source. What about personal care products? Our online survey has shown that women use an average of about 12 personal care products a day, and that exposes them to more than 160 chemical ingredients, some of them rather toxic, day after day after day. Men, the exposure is about half that because they only use about half of the personal care products that women use. These 10 Americans weren't farm workers, they weren't factory workers. And when the results came back from the laboratory, we had found 287 chemicals in just those 10 people. An average of 200 chemicals in each one. When you look at the chemicals by category, it's kind of astonishing. 28 different waste byproducts, dioxins, furans, things that come out of incinerators, smokestacks. 47 different consumer product ingredients, the flame retardants in these lights and this projector, Teflon chemicals, Scotchgard chemicals, pesticides. But for my money, most disturbing of all, we found 212 industrial chemicals and pesticide breakdown products that had been banned 30 years before we took those blood samples and sent them to the lab in 2004. Who were these 10 Americans? How were they exposed? Well, the truth of the matter is we don't really know very much about these 10 people. About the only thing we know is that as the exposures took place, all of them looked something like this. This was the first time anyone had ever bothered since the beginning of the chemical revolution to examine umbilical cord blood to see how many toxic chemicals got through to the developing child. Pediatricians and scientists thought, hoped, that babies were protected from toxic chemicals because the chemicals were filtered out by the placenta. Our study showed, disturbingly, that that's not the case. Industrial pollution begins in the womb.
So when we say that there's 400 to 800 in the average Canadian, those are real numbers. That's what's in your body now, since birth. So you're born toxic. So if you don't have a plan, you need a plan.
So the toxins get into our body through the air that we breathe, the food that we eat, the water that we drink, also through environmental radiation, and we're going to be going over that in the next little bit. Our personal care products that we lather all over our skin, we'll be going over that. And our home cleaning products are also very toxic in nature.
So the pond theory, I'll talk a little bit about the pond theory, but if you could think of your body as literally a pond. So you dump chemicals in, unless you have a way to get the chemicals out, you're going to have some issues. Okay, so if you look at the pond theory, look at the volume of toxins in. If those are equal, you're not going to have a challenge. If the way they get out of the body, and usually toxins get accumulated in fat cells, and over time they end up accumulating more and more and more. We talk about a product in the office called an isogenics product that we use for cleansing to actually remove the toxins of the body. So some people have some weight loss resistance because of all the toxins in their body. So one of the ways that we help you with that is actually to get those impurities out, and then you'll find that weight loss is actually a little bit easier. So if you look on, so we have about 170 to 100 trillion cells in the body, and all of them, just visualize them as ponds. And they're just sitting there sucking and absorbing things that come in, and they can breed different diseases. So if a toxin is inside a cell over time, it's going to start regenerating improperly. And then that can lead to conditions that we know as cancer, abnormal cell replication. If we get rid of the toxins much faster than they come in, we're going to end result in health. But if the reverse is true, you will end up getting sicker and sicker and sicker.
So diseases of the new millennium. What we're actually going over here is our grandparents and our great-grandparents, they actually didn't have a lot of diseases that we now know of. For example, things like rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, lupus, things like autism. Chronic fatigue is another big one that just is creeping up on us, and fibromyalgia. These things didn't exist in the days of our grandparents and our great-grandparents, but they're now very prevalent within our society. And these are a result of the chemicals that are being brought into our environment and our exposure to them.
So cancer. So toxic cells from these, like I explained earlier with the pond theory, if you can visualize those cells getting bombarded with toxins, over time this toxic tissue is going to form, you have the toxic cell, and then cells form organs, so you have a toxic organ, and over time you're going to have these toxic tissues, and over time those cells are going to replicate, they're going to regenerate, but they're going to regenerate improperly, and this will lead to, as we know, this abnormal cell replication is actually cancer. And the statistic, we had this at the clinic where you walk in and we had different products there, and we asked you, if you compared the stats in 1950, the cancer rate was 1 in 12. So what's happened in that time? Have humans changed all that much? So it's pretty much what we're exposed to day in, day out. So if we look at today's cancer rate, what's a cancer rate right now? Yeah, exactly. So 1 in 2, 1 in 3, 50% of people are dying of cancer right now. So we have to look at what we're being exposed to, what we've changed, how our lifestyle has changed as well. So genetics versus environment. A lot of us will blame, and we always get back to this, we don't want to blame our parents for what we're exposed to. Okay, so this gives us a good understanding that all the research is pointing here right now. So Harvard has done some massive studies. This is Time Magazine, put it right at the front. Anywhere between 80 and 95% of studies are showing that most of the reasons that we're exposed to these, or have cancer, or even heart disease, but more importantly right now we're talking about cancer, is lifestyle related. It's not your genetics. Our genetics have changed very, very little in the last 10,000 years. So we can't keep blaming those genes. You know, I have bad genes, therefore I'm going to have heart disease, I'm going to have diabetes, I'm going to end up having cancer. You can make decisions today that can change that.
So we're going to go over the toxic top 10 chemicals that we find within our homes. So the first one is our dishwashing detergents. The next thing is your oven cleaner. So if you don't have any self-cleaning ovens and you're using the chemicals, you want to stay away from the chemical ingredients such as lye and ammonia. Then we run into our laundry detergents, and you want to stay away from things like benzenes, and we'll get into more of that a little bit later. With respect to our floor and our furniture polishing, you want to stay away from your petroleum distillates. And our air fresheners. How many here use air fresheners within your homes? Okay, so the one thing you have to understand is with the liquid ones, especially the Glades, there's typically 6 chemicals that are found within these types of air fresheners, and they're actually targeted by the government, and they hold the highest priority of neurotoxicity, and they're likely to be soon banned within the country.
At number 6 there, you're going to see is the hard surface cleaners. This includes anything that you clean your countertops, your mirrors. So these are laden with toxic chemicals. We often breathe these in, and we're addicted to that smell that everything has to smell, quote unquote, disinfected or clean. That smell that you get is usually associated with some of these toxins. Antibacterial soaps and cleaners, like triclosan, which is actually in your toothpaste. Some of these have been linked with liver damage, a lot of endocrine disorders like thyroid conditions as well. What they're also finding is that the germs are actually getting stronger. Then we have dry cleaning, which we at this point all should know that dry cleaning products is not the healthiest thing to do. This product that's often used is Perk. You'll pick up this sweet, nice sweet odor from that, and that chemical is known to be a central nervous system depressant as well, and it's known to cause some cancer. Carpet and upholstery cleaners. Carpets alone, when you come into a new house, one of the most toxic environments is a new sealed house. Toilet bowl cleaners as well. Hydrochloric acid is in there. That's a very, very powerful chemical as well, as you need often a very powerful chemical for your toilets.
How many people drink 8 glasses of water a day? Okay, so that's a good rule of thumb, but you want to know how much water you're supposed to be taking in? Half your body weight, you can write this down because this is worthwhile writing down. Half your body weight in ounces, half your body weight measured in pounds, at that many ounces a day you're supposed to drink. And I do that. I do 3 or 4 of these a day. You'll see it's typically beside me at the clinic. And I know you're going to think you'll be running to the bathroom every 2 seconds if you do that, but your kidneys get used to it. You don't see me running to the bathroom all the time. But that's how much water you should drink. So what water should you drink? Do you think it matters what kind of water you drink, or is water is water is water? And just by the way, that doesn't count if you've got coffee with it or if it's Country Time lemonade mixed with it. So it has to just be pure water. But that brings up the question, how pure is our water? How many people here drink tap water? There you go. So you know what? Then you're in the right place. Okay, so there's 2 main problems with tap water. First of all, we have to process it, make it clean for the public, so that the municipal government doesn't get sued for poisoning us, right? So we want to kill off the bacteria and microorganisms so that we're not getting sick. Obviously, that's a good thing, right? Problem is, when they do that, there's a process in doing that. So they tend to chlorinate the water in order to kill that. When chlorine reacts with organic compounds, which are obviously in your body, it forms some toxic compounds. Fluoride. How many people know there's fluoride in your drinking water, your municipal drinking water? The idea years ago was to put the fluoride in there to help prevent tooth decay. But the World Health Organization disproved this claim in many studies, and California doesn't have fluoridation in the water. Several places in the States. And Waterloo, in fact, I think it was last year, they voted to take it out. So Waterloo is very progressive. If you've ever heard any of the radio commercials, they're very proud of their water. They're very proactive with their water quality, and they talk about the fact that, hey, you know, we proudly don't fluoridate our water. So you're drinking Guelph water, there's fluoride in it, and fluoride's banned in 99% of Western Europe. And you want to believe they're way ahead of the game than we are. All these countries down here, Austria, Belgium, China, Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, Japan, Luxembourg, Norway, and Sweden. If you think Canada is ahead of the game, think again. Fluoride has been shown to cause bone cancer. So if you're drinking a bottle of water that you've purchased, take a peek, see how much fluoride's in it, see how much chlorine's in it, because I guarantee there's both. Pharmaceuticals are actually in your drinking water. CTV News, nice to get some local Canadian research and stuff, but this was back in 2004. There was a study of 20 different drinking water plants in southern Ontario, and they found 9 different pharmaceuticals in those. Painkillers, cholesterol-lowering medications, antidepressants. They're finding hormone replacement therapy. When you're drinking tap water, you're drinking other people's drugs, and it's in parts per billion or parts per trillion or maybe even parts per million. But the reality is it's in there, and again, it's not acute, but it's chronic exposure. So what if just drinking tons, half your body weight in ounces of water a day of tap water was making you depressed, was making you infertile? What if? You know what? It's a simple thing to change. So make that change now. So purifying your water is important.
So basically with purification of your water, you want to basically go and get to a water source that is reverse osmosis. That's your best form of water purification. We do deal with a company at our makeover that was called Crystal Clear, and you can contact them as if you need any information on reverse osmosis. The one thing with reverse osmosis, though, it takes everything out of the water. Okay, so it leaves the water slightly acidic, and our bodies don't necessarily like acidic environments. Actually, cancers form in acidic environments. So what you want to do is you want to purchase something that will neutralize the water, such as the ice of water that we have within our clinic. Just put 2 drops of that in, and it'll basically neutralize the water, bringing the pH back to around 7, and that's going to be optimal pH for your body consuming the water.
important to talk about the plastics that we are exposed to when we eat and drink. Our bodies take in over 200 micrograms a day of cancer-causing, hormone-disrupting chemicals called phthalates. But these are hormone-like substances, and they actually affect your body in the same way that real hormones would. They mimic hormones, and they're in a lot of the soft plastics and flexible plastics that we use. Tim Hortons cups, the reason you saw Tim Hortons cup back there, people are pretty defensive of their Starbucks, their Tim Hortons, but it's, again, to get you thinking. The plastics on there, we're going to help you understand, are toxic plastics. And they're toxic when you heat them up. So guess what? The coffee, the tea, whatever you're having, even if it's like something better like an herbal tea, it's not even caffeinated, but guess what? You're heating that plastic up and ingesting it once a day, maybe more than once a day, hundreds of times a year potentially.
So when you're looking at your plastics, there's always a triangle on the actual plastic. If it's a bottle, look underneath the bottle, and you'll see the triangle, and within the triangle you will see several numbers. The good plastics are with the numbers 1, 2, 4, and 5, okay, and these numbers keep you alive. And the bad plastics are 3, 6, and 7, okay, and these ones take you to heaven, so that's an easy way to remember it.
Personal care products. Again, this is the most important lecture we do all year because this is stuff that you're covering yourselves and your family with every day. The average person uses, well, 5 is probably the guys, 25 is be the ladies, personal care products every day.
And 89% of these personal care products have not even been evaluated for their safety. A third of these personal care products are actually known to be possible human carcinogens, and that's one key thing to remember.
So the David Suzuki Foundation that Dr. Dan talked about, I think it's davidsuzuki.org, we've got it on there, you want to write that down. There's an article there called the Canada's Cosmetic Regulation Could Use a Makeover. Companies aren't required to notify till 10 days after the products are released. And many chemicals are never tested. There's this hot list, this cosmetics ingredients hot list, and there's over 4,000 chemicals that are backlogged. These are suspicious chemicals that have good indication that need to be followed up. But there's 4,000 that are still in the products you use every single day that Health Canada knows are problematic, but haven't really done the research and they have no authority, or they can't enforce the removal of these products. Now, we talk about your skin's your biggest organ. What you put on it goes in it, and if it touches your skin, it goes in.
So we have over 125 ingredients, as Dr. Brent was saying, we have over 125 ingredients that are formulated and they're suspected for carcinogenic activities. There is an actual cosmetic database that you can go to. It's called Skin Deep, and it's actually a great resource to have. You can put it on your smartphone, and whenever, as Dr. Brent said, if you don't get one of those pamphlets, if you put it on your smartphone, basically you can just type in the name of the skincare product that you want to use, and you can check it out, and it has like a high risk level and has a low risk, and it's a great resource to have.
Talk about the top 4 things that you need to look for and avoid in the products that you use. The first one is called DEA, diethylamine. You'll often see TEA, triethylamine also, DEA, TEA, but they're in most personal care products, cosmetics, bubble baths, laundry, soaps, lotions. But basically there's clear evidence of carcinogenic activity for over 10 years. And these are still in a lot of the products. Propylene glycol. But I looked at my Old Spice deodorant and I almost fell over when it had propylene glycol in it. Because that's really, it's an antifreeze solution, it's in hydraulic fluid, and something that's in the machine shop, to put that on your skin, and it does penetrate your skin, and it's actually shown that it doesn't cause skin damage, it goes through your skin. It causes kidney damage, liver abnormalities, skin cell growth inhibition. It affects respiration, immune function, central nervous system depression, just from putting your deodorant on. Sodium lauryl sulfate is probably the most common one because it's in everything. It's what makes everything bubble, makes everything foam. It's in your shampoos, in your soaps, it's in your Bath and Body Works, your little foaming hand soaps, and all those things that people love so much. This is a tough one to get rid of. But the problem is it's shown to induce mutation or abnormal cell growth, and it goes and stays in your organs. It goes and stays in your heart, your liver, your lungs, your brain, just from contacting your skin.
And the last one is our parabens. And these are a class of chemicals that are widely used as preservatives. They can be found in our cosmetics and our pharmaceuticals, and even within our, some of our food products. And they're also found in breast cancer tissue. So as Dr. Brent had mentioned before, the xenoestrogens, or the estrogen mimicking, this is one of them. So promotes tumor growth. So this is another one we need to stay away from.
So now, one of the big things that comes up, people say, it's cost. It's too expensive. I don't want to have to pay twice as much for my toothpaste or twice as much for my deodorant. But is there a cost to cancer? Is there a cost to having cancer? Is there a cost to living with cancer? Is there a cost to dying from cancer or going through treatment for cancer? So is it worth it to you to spend a little more, maybe even spend twice as much, on a product that's not going to cause cancer? So here are some examples of healthier products. Toothpaste I use is from Jason. Burt's Bees, we got some examples back there. Green Beaver, you notice we have, that's the foaming hand soap that we use in the clinic. Some of the Melaleuca products. Zayre's, that's local, people can go there. You can get Martha Stewart Clean products, Nature Clean, they're at the back. So you don't have to go out of your way too much, and it's probably not as much money as you think you'd have to spend. But you do have to make a decision and take stock of what you've got. You've got to kind of spend a few hours doing that. Toss this stuff, because you're not going to give them to people, and you're not going to wait to finish using the cancer stuff that you have at home. You toss it, and then you go buy some new stuff. It's a lump investment. Sunscreen, this is another one I've added here. How many people know that they know that they know that the sun causes cancer? We've had that beat into our head many different times. There's evidence now that sunscreen causes cancer. How many people know that your body, when exposed to sun for a prolonged period of time, will produce vitamin D? Okay, so vitamin D is produced by your body. You need it for bone density. You also need it for its anti-cancer, its antiviral. But you're not going to, if you put lotion on, you think you're going to be able to produce vitamin D? You're not. So by going, every time we go in the sun, slapping on that lotion, we're decreasing your body's ability to protect herself naturally from cancer. The other thing is that there's several chemicals, we're only going to go through two here, that are known carcinogens. Retinol palmitate. It's actually been shown in various studies to accelerate cancer production. Okay, so you want to look for that one, retinol palmitate, on any of your sunscreens. And the other is oxybenzone. Now this one's interesting. This actually, it's okay until you expose it to light. Sunscreen product, right? Because when it's exposed to light, it becomes a photocarcinogen. It creates free radicals, and that damages your DNA, which you need to not be damaged. So what do? Okay, so there's various products that you can eat to increase the production of chlorophyll and that actually protect your body naturally. Omega-3 fatty acids, fish oils, EPA, DHA, those are for sale in the clinic here. You can get those. Broccoli, watermelon, greens are important for your body to take in. But if you want to know which best sunscreens to use, that website Dr. Frank talked about, Skin Deep, put together by the Environmental Working Group, there is a huge list, and they let you know which ones to put on your body. We have a product there, it's an isogenics one called Iso Sun Guard. It's an SPF 30, it's what I use with my kids those first couple days when we were down in Mexico, but I don't cover up with lotion every day. I typically rather wear a shirt if I don't want to get exposed, wear a hat, just limit your exposure otherwise. Aspartame. Now, so aspartame, anyone ever heard of aspartame? Pretty much if something's sugar-free, you can bet it's probably got aspartame or Splenda in it. Those are the top two substitutes. Aspartame has more than 92 different dangerous side effects and accounts for 3/4 of all reports to the FDA about reactions to food additives. But take a look at all the problems here. So your anxiety, your depression, your headaches, migraines, and if you get numbness, it may be related to toxicity, and this may be one of the toxins that you're exposed to. Joint pain, vision loss, breathing problems. That's why we need to take stock of what we're putting and take responsibility for what we're putting on and in our bodies. Action steps, what do? Read the label. Again, it comes back to reading the label. Whatever you do, make sure it doesn't have aspartame. Avoid the diet drinks, those If it says that it's sugar-free, you probably should be putting it in your body. You know, if it's sugar-free, and then read to see if there's something in there that's making it sugar-free. Because there's some things that are just naturally sugar-free that's different. So, you know, we want to use things that are healthy and build our body up. There's a gum that my kids can have, and I guess your kids can have. It's called spry gum. It's sweetened with xylitol. And stevia or xylitol are the two sweeteners that we recommend that you use in place of Splenda or aspartame. Even sugar. I'd rather my kids have sugar than have aspartame. MSG. So the problem is second only to aspartame in level of toxicity. It also is an excitotoxin, and it's highly allergic. It's in most of your flavored chips, your deli meats, canned soups, crackers, salad dressings, most restaurant foods. It's in coffee. Those people who you see lining up at their favorite coffee shop, there's speculation that there's MSG in there. That's not verified, but it's definitely in coffee, and it doesn't need to be. It's in prepackaged rice, prepackaged pasta. So understanding that it's in the food, but how do you know if it's there? Do you just assume it's there? If it's processed, you can pretty much assume it's there. MSG poisoning symptoms. Now, this is something that, again, take a look. Is your headaches, are your headaches related? Is your asthma related? This is what happens when your body effectively is loaded with this toxin on an ongoing basis. Heart irregularities. People have heart palpitations, endocrine disruptions, numbness, tingling sensations. So what's the action step? Again, read the label. 3 words, read the label. What it comes down to is take responsibility for what's going on in your body. See if there's hidden MSG in it. Pretty much assume anything that's packaged or low quality food has MSG in it to make it more palatable. Stick with whole, organic, local foods. How many people know what genetically modified foods are? Hands are up. Some people know. About half the audience, a third of the audience knows what they are. But you know what? If you ask the average person what are genetically modified foods, what do you think they'd say?
So do you know what genetically modified foods are?
Like tomatoes and things they do like to make them last longer when they ship them and stuff.
Right.
Bettered or improved by collecting the best of and keep going. But
I've heard of them. Yeah, I don't know how big of a fan I am, but
Right.
Yeah, I don't really know if it's good or bad.
Did you know that we've been eating these foods for the last 10 years?
No, I haven't known that. Where do they normally sell those kind of foods?
I'm kind of taken back by it. I thought it was just grown in soil, and I didn't know they were modifying my food.
I know.
It's kind of scary.
Well, I know it's been a while. I didn't realize quite that long.
Well, the simplest way to put it is that scientists had an idea to make crops more resilient to external factors. So let's say you grow tomatoes, and at night it gets so cold that by morning half your tomatoes are frozen, and now you can't sell them anymore. This is what scientists were able to change through genetic modification. They figured out a way to take DNA from one organism and put it inside a completely different organism to create a desired and specific outcome. For example, let's go back to the tomato scenario. Scientists recognized that Arctic flounder, yes, that's the fish, could withstand extremely cold temperatures. They thought, what if we took the DNA trait that allows the flounder to withstand the cold and put it inside the tomato DNA so that the tomato could withstand the same temperatures? Now you've just narrowed your chances of your tomatoes becoming frozen. This idea that you could now get 100% crop yield was the original guiding principle for genetic modification. Our friends at Lilly Films have a documentary called The Future of Food by Deborah Coons-Garcia that explains it best.
Genetic engineering is really a radical revolution in food production. It's really a cell invasion technology. You know, people have heard they're taking a flounder gene and putting it in tomato so the tomato can last in cold temperatures. But people don't ask, how does that flounder gene get in that tomato? How does it get in there? And what really happens is the only way you can do it is to invade the cell of the tomato and deposit the flounder gene. Well, what's good at invading cells? Bacteria and viruses.
After 12 years of searching, Monsanto found a soil bacteria that is naturally immune to Roundup herbicide. Their goal was to genetically engineer DNA from these bacteria into various plants. They cut out a sequence of DNA that is resistant to Roundup. But if this DNA sequence alone is inserted into a corn plant, it will have no effect. So the next step involves E. coli bacteria. Gaps are created in the E. coli DNA, and when the two test tubes are mixed together, some of the E. coli DNA recombines with the Roundup-resistant bacteria. Then the technicians smuggle the engineered DNA into the cells of the corn plant they want to modify.
This capacity of bacteria and viruses to invade mammals in different ways is what really has a lot of people edgy about biotechnology, because that's really what the tools are all about. In order to move genetic material from one organism to another that don't normally cross, you've got to sort of behave like bacteria and viruses and invade into the cells and become established, just like a virus must become established.
Like the Future Foods said, Monsanto, the largest biotech company in the world, was able to make seeds that resisted their own Roundup herbicide. This allows farmers to spray as much herbicide as they want without worrying about their crops dying. But it doesn't stop there. Scientists can now make seeds that produce their own pesticide. This is like you and me walking around with a mosquito repellent coming out of our pores. How do they do this? Scientists found a bacteria in the soil that is lethal to many species of insects called Bacillus thuringiensis, or BT for short, and they genetically engineered it into the crops. So what could the effects be when the bacteria that only used to live in our soil is now being distributed into the air through our crops? In the Philippines, the people living next to the genetically engineered cornfield developed recurring skin, respiratory, and intestinal problems. Blood tests were done on 39 of the Filipinos, and it was revealed that their immune system was affected by the Bt toxin that the corn had released.
Imagine a corn plant, a soy plant or something, that you can just coat with Roundup and it survives. So the problems with the dangers of genetically modified food are these. It causes allergens, it's toxic to your cells, it obviously increases your cancer risk, it affects your immune system, it creates superviruses, and there's this thing, anyone ever heard of Morgellons disease? Okay, so again, this is something that's where you feel there's like bugs crawling into your skin. How to reduce your effect? I mean, ultimately, if you're exposed to these genetically modified foods, you have to understand the top 3 ones to avoid are corn, soy, and canola. Thanks to Monsanto, 90 to 95% of those are genetically modified. So ultimately, you want to buy organic. If it's organic, it should be non-GMO. How many people own a microwave? Raise your hand. Hey, there you go. Okay, so you're not going to like me by the end, but I'm not up here to be liked, obviously. We're up here to help you. So 90% of homes have them. Microwave itself, cooking, is not natural and not healthy and more dangerous than most people realize. So it works through magnetics, right? So there's polarized molecules and they get sped up and they get spin really fast to create friction, and as they create friction, they heat the food. But the problem is they tear up the tissues nearby them and end up destroying the molecules by the process. So Russians have actually, they banned, there's an article in the Journal of Natural Science, they banned microwave ovens because of the long-term effects on the nerve system. It causes long-term use. Continually eating microwave foods can affect your brain tissue by shorting out electrical impulses. Your body can't metabolize some of the byproducts. What you put in there isn't always what you get out. What you put in there is never what you get out there. It affects hormone production. I mean, you see all these different things that keep coming back to hormone production. Minerals, vitamins, the nutrients that are so vital to our body's integrity are reduced, altered, or affected by the microwaving process. Minerals in vegetables, especially root vegetables, are turned into cancerous free radicals, increased risk of stomach and intestinal cancers. It's immune system deficiencies created by continually eating microwave food. Regular eating microwave food can also affect your memory, create anxiety, decrease concentration, again, because it shorts out the brain circuits. If you have one, don't give it to someone. Either use it less frequently if it's built into your kitchen, or not at all. Steam ovens, great. Toaster ovens, thaw food overnight, just takes a bit more planning, or heat it conventionally. Raise your hand if you own a cell phone. Everybody, right? So let's check it out. So CTV News, I don't know if anyone's watched the news lately. It's nice for me to put some current stuff in. So CTV News, May 31st, just a week or so ago, they had a program on there. They're talking about a study with 10,000 subjects that was published in the International Journal of Epidemiology. And they studied 10,000 people for 5 years. And they found there was a 40% increase in brain tumors called gliomas in people who use cell phones 30 minutes a day. So if you're using it for a minute or two here or there, obviously that incidence is less. But what you have to understand specifically about cell phone radiation is it's cumulative. So over 2 billion people use cell phones, but never before in the history of the planet has so much technology been available so readily without any research to back up the safety. And so a $25 million study was commissioned actually by the cell phone industry. And they actually said, okay, you know what, let's prove that it's safe. So this Dr. George Carlo, who's a famous researcher, and he did a 7-year research study, but the information that he came up was not favorable to the cell phone industry, so it got buried, and now he put out his own book talking all about it. But basically 30,000 to 50,000 cases annually of brain and eye cancer. And they said over the next 5 years, about 500,000 cases. But you're going to see this is going to become epidemic. Children especially are the highest risk group because their skull is thinner and their cumulative exposure is going to be much, much longer. My son is in high school. He's got one. I tell him not to wear it, but I tell him to text. I said, you know what, don't even put it by your head unless you absolutely have to for a quick second.
An important new alert about the safety of cell phones and the possible risk of cancer, brain cancer in particular. It comes from the World Health Organization, the powerful health arm of the United Nations, and scientists from 14 countries have reversed those years of reassurance. After a new review of all the evidence, the scientists decided to put cell phones in the same risk category as chloroform, exhaust from gas engines, and the pesticide DDT. So what has changed? How strong is the evidence? Our Jim Sciutto has spent the entire day questioning the experts. He's here now. Jim.
Well, Diane, this is a first, and it's a big reversal for the WHO, which had insisted there is no evidence of a link between cell phones and cancer. Now it says it has found that evidence, and while it's still collecting data, felt it was necessary to issue this warning now.
This is your brain with a cell phone turned off, and this is your brain with a cell phone turned on. Notice the red areas at the top. Studies had already established that radiation from cell phones increases brain activity. Today, for the first time, the WHO concluded that low-level radiation from cell phones could possibly cause cancer. A 2010 study they examined showed participants who used cell phones for more than 10 years had double the rate of a rare type of brain tumor called a glioma. Placing cell phones in the same category as lead and engine exhaust, the director of the WHO's cancer research arm said in a statement, "Given the potential consequences for public health, it is important to take pragmatic measures to reduce exposure." A small but growing group of scientists say that since the cancers involved take years, even decades to develop, there is a need to act now.
A lot more research needs to be done, but science is very slow on these matters. It took decades to move from cigarettes may cause harm to cigarettes actually cause harm.
Today, CTIA, the group representing the wireless industry, noted the WHO did not conduct any new research, adding, in the past it's given the same score to pickled vegetables and coffee. No group is recommending we stop using cell phones, but some, such as the American Cancer Society, say those who want to change should consider using headsets or the speakerphone option. We noticed that even some cell phone companies recommend keeping phones at a distance from the body. For the iPhone, 5/8 of an inch, for the BlackBerry, a full inch.
We polled dozens of brain specialists around the country to see if they take any precautions themselves, and of 92 who answered, Diane, about a third of them, 27, said they already use earpieces to protect themselves.
it's something that you need to be aware of. You need to be aware of for your kids, your grandkids, and get them plugged into other options. So one thing that if you ever see me talking on my cell phone, it's on speakerphone. If it's something private, I'll go somewhere private and talk on speakerphone. If it's windy and I have to get, I'll put it by my head for a sec, make a call, but literally I will never have it by my head. And tend not to wear it unless I'm just in transit. I might have it on my belt here for a second. I'm just going to go A to B, and then I'll put it beside me in the car. I don't even wear it in the car. Texting, obviously please not while you're driving or while you're walking, because you walk across the street and get toasted by that. But texting is a much better choice instead of using the cell phone. And various different ways to decrease your exposure to radiation. There's radiation absorption devices you can get. Obviously, avoid carrying cell phones in your breast pocket. Some men were doing that for a while, some still do. I highly recommend we don't do that. So ultimately, we are being poisoned. The worst is we're doing it to ourselves. And when it comes, at the end of the day, what it comes down to is who are you going to trust? Because if you're just trusting the people who make the products, ultimately, at the end of the day, they just want to sell the products to you. They want you to be, enjoying them, using them. But there's much better options or safer options for you to use. We have an isogenics product line at the clinic, which is a cleansing program. The nice side effect is that there's weight loss as a part of it. So there's a blend of trace minerals, and it basically supports your body naturally to cleanse the toxins out of your body. Tonight's lecture is about one word: trust. When you put food in your mouth, when you put cream on your skin, when you expose yourself to the personal care products, when you're brushing your teeth, there's a huge amount of trust that you put in the governing authorities to make sure you're protected. And the reality is that Health Canada isn't really testing all this stuff. I do want to give all of you the opportunity to give yourself a hand for showing up here tonight. Okay?